No, just wanted to know from where did you get that guitar?
This guitar?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a very technical question.
Yeah, it is.
This is actually bought at a second-hand store somewhere in London on Denmark Street, and during our first tour there. One of the things you do when you travel abroad as musicians, forget the Eiffel Tower, forget the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you go to a guitar store because you walk in this massive place with 3,000 guitars and you're just drooling over everything. So yeah, musicians porn, you just have to do it. So yeah, I went to a store there and I saw this, and I think I went back for 3 days, consecutively, just playing it and playing it. They pretty much threw me out of there and said I had to buy it. Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Let me ask you something fundamental. You've been in the scene for quite some time, right?
Yes.
So how do you see the music evolving over the last couple of decades, from the 90s to the 2000s?
I think, like in the 90s, like you mentioned before, there were very few bands, upcoming bands at least, that were focusing on doing their own music. In fact, for a time, it was almost uncool to have original compositions, OCs, as they'd call them at that point. But from then to now, till about 5 years ago, it's become very, very uncool to be an upcoming band with no songs of your own. So it's become customary for an upcoming band to have your own music. If you don't have your own music, you're not cool, right? So that's great. That's a fundamental shift in the way people are perceiving being a creative artist of some sort. You have to have your own work, right, and a body of work at that. So one album isn't enough. So if you have when you've written about 50 songs, then it's pretty obvious you're serious about it.
Yeah, being original is the key.
It's key, and it has to be. And the thing with being original is that with any form of art, if you want to call music an art, it takes time and it takes maturity before your own work achieves some sort of creative relevance, I suppose. So when you buy your first guitar, you walk into a store and buy your first guitar, and for the first 2 years, you're just getting to grips with playing itself, making yourself able to create some music. And it takes a few more years after that to start beginning to express yourself, and it takes a few more years after that before you start expressing yourself with any degree of confidence or craft or any, like I said, relevance in how you're expressing yourself, right? It takes time. And so I think you're going to see the best work from the recent crop of musicians across the next 5 or 10 years if they hang around, because that's the most difficult thing. Staying together, hanging around, continuing to do the work is the biggest challenge, apart from everything else. Yeah, all the other challenges of money and job and family and all that nonsense is still there. But just staying together, if you can do that and keep doing your work, that'll be enough. That'll automatically bring this maturity and this depth in the work. A lot of the work right now is good, but it has, I think, very little of it has depth, simply because it's not been around for long enough. I can safely say that because we've been around for so long, there are layers to what we do, and there's an assurance in our craft. There's a confidence in our expression that is there simply because we've been doing it for nearly 20 years. 17 years now have gone by and we've been doing it. So that's why there is stuff in there, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good stuff. It's just that it's there.
Yeah,
right?
Band name, very very unique and interesting name. So is there any story behind that name, and is it
The story behind the name, should I give you the short story or the long story?
a long story? Yeah?
So since we're in Kerala, the short story is that when the band began in 1996, there were 3 Malayalis and 1 quarter Malayali in the band. So it became third, Mal and a quarter. One of those ideas that you have 5 minutes before you go up on stage because somebody is saying, you need a name. And you're like, okay, what do we call ourselves? Oh, 3 Malayalis, okay, 3 Malayalis. It's like that. And that's how the name really started. And it was, the band at that time was actually the idea of the vocalist at that point. His name was Ajit. And we were all in college, and he was a working guy. And there was this category of competition in a college that time called semi-professional. So basically you could have people in college and out of college taking part. So he wanted to take part, and he couldn't because he didn't have a band. So he knew us, and so it was his idea to form the band, because he said, man, I can't do this competition if you guys aren't there, So, and he was there in the band only for that one show, after which he disappeared. He got a job in Singapore or something, and I've literally not seen him since that first show. I have not seen him, right? So it was his idea to form the band. And so the name stopped being relevant after the first gig. But we kept the name because it's an interesting name, and which is why And it's also, I guess, a curse, because almost the first question we get asked from every journalist across the last 17 years has always been, so where did you get that name?
With one exception, where this is the audience for the first time. So I'm off the hook, man.
No, but it's fun. It's a conversation starter. People always wonder what it's about, and people have various definitions saying thermal and a quarter. Oh, must be it's cold in Bangalore, so you need to wear thermals and have 1/4 of something. So so otherwise you can't make music or something. I don't know. So yeah, it's a conversation starter, and we can't change it now. And that's it. Thank you.
Who's your fourth album? This is it. It had the photograph of a cockroach on it, which of course had a larger metaphorical story to tell, of the last band from the future talking back to the present.
Yeah.
What if Thermal and a Quarter was the last band in the future? What would you look back and tell yourself today?
I hope you're not the last band, man. That'd be a very sad place to be in. But yeah, it's one of those things that just might happen. Yeah, it would be a story like that, you know. We had some good times. We spent some time in the sun, and we wrote some songs, and we played it to a bunch of people all over the place. And what more could you ask for? Somebody recently asked me in one more interview saying, so what's the dream? You know, what's the dream from now on? And I had to look back and say, I'm living the dream. You know, for the longest time, the dream was simply to be able to play music and not have some mind-numbing job I had to go back to just to make money. And the music is just a hobby kind of thing. That was the dream. The dream was to just be able to play music. And I'm doing that now. For the last 6 years, that's what I've done. And so I'm living the dream. There is, I don't know what further dream. Obviously, you can keep saying, yeah, I also want to win a Grammy, and I want to win an Oscar, I want to win a whatever, you know, I want to win things, I want to have lots of money and all that crap. But the dream is this. The dream is to be able to play music, to write music, to hang with this great bunch of people that we have in the band, and keep doing that. And if that's going, then everything else is fine. You know.